Ever wonder how a tiny island off the coast of Europe came to rule a quarter of the world? Most empires did it with armies, with swords and gunpowder, but Britain conquered the world with something far more powerful, a weapon forged not in fire, but written on paper: debt. This isn't just a story about kings and colonies. It's the story of how borrowing became a tool of domination, how a bankrupt nation built a global financial system that, in many ways, still defines our world today. Let's rewind to the late 1600s. Britain was a mess. Decades of civil war had left the country broke. The government had no money, no trust, and no one willing to lend to them. It was the opposite of an empire in the making. Then came 1694, the year that changed everything. The government struck a deal with a group of London merchants. "Lend us £1.2 million, they said, and we'll guarantee you interest, paid for by future taxes. In return, these merchants were given a charter to create a brand new institution, the Bank of England. This was revolutionary. For the first time, a country's debt wasn't tied to the king's personal wealth or the amount of gold in the treasury. It was a permanent national debt, backed by the future earnings of the entire country. The rich lent their money to the state, and the state paid them back with interest. War and empire were no longer funded by treasure chests, but by trust. With this new financial firepower, credit became the lifeblood of the British Empire. Throughout the 18th century, Britain was almost constantly at war, with France, with Spain, with the Dutch. These wars were incredibly expensive. But while other nations were forced to raise punishing taxes or plunder their enemies, Britain had a secret weapon. They issued something called consols, long-term government bonds. This created a stable, tradable market for national debt. Investors could buy and sell these bonds, turning the act of funding the government into a profitable business. War became a financial operation. Britain could fund decade-long conflicts, pay its soldiers, build its ships, and support its allies, all with borrowed money. By the time Napoleon was finally defeated in 1815, Britain's national debt had skyrocketed to nearly 250% of its total economic output. By any normal standard, the country should have been bankrupt. Instead, it was triumphant. Why? Because investors still trusted that Britain would pay them back. Behind that mountain of debt stood a global empire of taxpayers, traders, and commerce, the world's first financial-industrial complex. Debt had made Britain powerful, but it was finance that made it untouchable. While British armies fought on distant battlefields, its bankers were building a different kind of empire back home. The City of London, that small district in the heart of the capital, became the world's financial clearinghouse. Gold, silver, and credit from every corner of the globe flowed through its streets. If you were a merchant in Calcutta, a planter in Jamaica, or a miner in South Africa, you depended on London for credit. If you wanted to build a railway in Canada or a canal in Egypt, you didn't go to your local king. You went to the London Stock Exchange. Behind every loan, every investment, was a single, powerful assumption: that the British government's promise to pay was as good as gold. This financial web grew tighter with every passing year. Powerful private banks like Barings and Rothschild became extensions of foreign policy, financing entire governments in exchange for political influence. By the late 1800s, Britain was exporting more money than it was goods. It didn't always need to occupy a country to control it. Debt did the job just as well. You've heard the saying, "The sun never set on the British Empire." Well, they forgot to add that the interest payments never stopped either. Then, in 1821, Britain made its ultimate move to consolidate this financial empire: the gold standard. From that point on, every British pound could be exchanged for a fixed amount of physical gold. This created an illusion of absolute stability, but it also created something far more important: obedience. Any nation that wanted to trade and prosper had to link its own currency to the pound, and by doing so, they effectively handed over a piece of their economic freedom to London. To stay in the system, they had to play by Britain's rules, keep their budgets balanced, protect British trade, and, most importantly, always pay back their debts in sterling. It was imperial control without the soldiers. London didn't need to send troops anymore. It just sent bankers. By the start of the 20th century, nearly 70% of all global trade was conducted in pounds. Britain didn't just rule the waves, it ruled the balance sheets. But no weapon, no matter how powerful, stays invincible forever. The very thing that made the empire strong also made it vulnerable. The First World War unleashed spending on a scale no one had ever imagined. Britain borrowed from everyone it could, its colonies, its investors, and, crucially, from a rising power across the Atlantic, the United States. The world's greatest creditor was quietly becoming a debtor. When the war finally ended, the numbers didn't lie. The pound had lost its shine, the gold standard was cracking, and the City of London's dominance was fading. America, which had once been a borrower from Britain, was now the world's new banker. The Second World War finished what the First had started. By 1945, the British Empire was financially and morally exhausted. One by one, its colonies declared independence, and the map of the world was redrawn. But here's the most fascinating part of the story. The British Empire may have fallen, but the system it created never really died. That model, born back in 1694, of a government borrowing from the public, paying interest, and rolling over its debt forever, became the blueprint for modern capitalism. Every modern bond market, every central bank, every government running a deficit, traces its DNA back to the Bank of England. The United States, the European Union, China, they all operate on this same fundamental logic. We live in a world where money is no longer just a measure of value, but a measure of trust in someone's promise to pay you back later. In that sense, the empire didn't collapse. It just evolved. The Romans conquered with legions, the Mongols with horses, the British conquered with a promise, and in the end, that might just be the most powerful weapon of all. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about how our world works. See you next time.